What if I told you that the years I spent sweating, pushing, and believing I could outrun my habits were the very years that taught me the hardest truth of my life? I am 98 years old now. I have lived long enough to watch fitness trends rise and fall, long enough to see machines get shinier while people grow sicker, long enough to hear the same promise repeated in different words: just move more and everything will be fine. I believed that promise once. I believed it deeply. I believed that if my legs were strong enough, my lungs full enough, my heart steady enough, the damage I did at the table would somehow cancel itself out. It did not. I exercised faithfully. I walked every morning. I stretched every evening. I stayed active when many around me slowed down. And yet, inside my body, quiet negotiations were being lost. Hunger grew louder after workouts. Cravings sharpened. Portions expanded without my noticing. I told myself I had earned them. I told myself movement had given me permission. What I did not understand then is what age has made painfully clear now. The body does not negotiate with effort. It responds to inputs. And food is the loudest input of all. Exercise, I learned, is powerful, but it is not sovereign. It does not overrule poor nutrition. It does not erase excess. It does not silence hormones that have been trained day after day to expect more than the body needs. You can exhaust your muscles, but you cannot exhaust biology into submission. This is not a story about discipline or willpower or guilt. It is a story about limits, about ceilings we pretend do not exist until we hit them repeatedly, about the moment you realize that health is not built by how much you burn, but by what you stop putting in. I share this not as theory, but as memory, as a woman who tried to out-exercise her diet and learned slowly and humbly that it cannot be done. For a long time, I believed effort was the highest virtue the body recognized. If something went wrong, I assumed the answer was more movement, longer walks, faster steps, extra laps around the block. I treated exercise like a moral currency, something I could spend to erase what I had eaten the day before. And for a while, this illusion seemed to work. The scale stayed quiet. My energy felt acceptable. My conscience was calm. But the body is patient before it is honest. What I did not understand then is that exercise has a ceiling. No matter how dedicated you are, no matter how disciplined, there is a limit to how much energy the body is willing to expend on a daily basis. Past that limit, it adapts. It becomes efficient. It learns. Muscles burn fewer calories doing the same work. Movements that once felt demanding become economical. The body, always trying to survive, does not reward excess effort with endless burn. It protects itself. I noticed this not in numbers, but in sensations. The same walk that once left me light and clear began to leave me ravenous. Hunger did not whisper anymore. It demanded. I would come home from moving my body and feel a pull toward food that was stronger than reason. And when I ate, I did not eat modestly. I ate with justification. I told myself I had earned it. This is where the fantasy breaks. Exercise does not operate in isolation. It talks to appetite. It speaks directly to hormones that regulate hunger and fullness. When you move more, your body often answers by asking for more, not because you are weak, but because biology is precise. Calories burned are rarely left unclaimed. They are remembered, and the body has many subtle ways of collecting them back. I learned this the slow way. I learned it as my portions grew while my satisfaction shrank. I learned it as my body composition shifted even though my routine did not. I learned it when rest days felt harder than workout days because hunger no longer had an outlet. This is not failure. This is compensation. Metabolism is not a fire you can endlessly stoke. It is a system that balances inputs and outputs over time. When exercise rises, other systems adjust. You move less without noticing. You sit longer. You fidget less. Your body saves energy where it can. This is not sabotage. This is intelligence. What diet does, exercise cannot undo. Food is not just fuel, it is instruction. Every meal tells the body what kind of environment it lives in: scarcity or abundance, safety or excess, stability or chaos. When the message is constant excess, no amount of movement can rewrite it. Exercise may improve strength, it may support the heart, it may sharpen the mind, but it does not override hormonal signals trained by years of eating more than the body needs, or eating foods that demand more insulin, more storage, more recovery than movement can balance. I used to believe calories were simple math. Burn more than you eat, and the equation solves itself. That belief did not survive age, because the body is not a calculator. It is a historian. It remembers patterns. It anticipates tomorrow based on yesterday. If food is unreliable or excessive, it adjusts storage. If hunger follows exercise repeatedly, it learns to protect itself earlier next time. This is why exercise fails as damage control. You cannot ask movement to fix inflammation created at the table. You cannot expect a walk to repair blood sugar swings created by sugar and refined starch. You cannot ask muscles to clean up what the liver and pancreas are overwhelmed by daily. Exercise helps when the system is supported. It struggles when the system is sabotaged. I saw this clearly when I stopped moving as much. Illness, age, and time eventually reduce activity. This is unavoidable. And when exercise was no longer my shield, the truth of my diet stood exposed. The habits I thought were harmless because I worked them off showed their cost quickly. Blood markers shifted, energy dropped, recovery slowed. What exercise had been masking, food revealed. This is why the idea of out-exercising a bad diet is not just wrong, it is dangerous. It teaches people to ignore the most powerful lever they have. It tells them to keep eating as they are, to simply suffer harder in the gym. It delays the correction until the body can no longer compensate. Diet has veto power because it operates every day, multiple times a day, whether you exercise or not. You eat more often than you train. You digest longer than you move. You recover from meals constantly. Food shapes hormones hour by hour. Exercise occupies minutes. This does not diminish movement. It puts it in its rightful place. Exercise is an amplifier. It makes a good diet work better. It improves insulin sensitivity when insulin is not constantly abused. It supports muscle when protein is adequate. It improves cardiovascular health when inflammation is not chronically fed. Exercise shines when diet is aligned. It struggles when diet is chaotic. I wish I had learned this earlier. I wish someone had told me that discipline at the table saves far more suffering than discipline at the gym. That restraint is quieter than effort, but far more powerful. That health is not something you earn by punishment, but something you protect by choice. At 98, I no longer exercise to erase. I move to support what I have already decided with food. I walk to circulate, not to compensate. I stretch to stay mobile, not to justify indulgence. The burden is no longer on my legs. It is on my decisions. And that, I have learned, is where it always belonged. There is a moment in life when excuses run out not because you are judged, but because you are tired of being misled. For me, that moment did not arrive in a doctor's office or a crisis. It arrived quietly, in repetition. The same efforts producing smaller returns, the same promises failing in predictable ways, the same hunger arriving on schedule, no matter how much I moved. That is when I began to see diet not as a preference, but as a command signal. Food speaks first, always, before muscles contract, before sweat forms, before a step is taken. Food has already set the conditions under which everything else will operate. It decides how insulin behaves. It determines whether hunger will whisper or shout. It influences inflammation long before exercise has a chance to intervene. Movement reacts. Diet initiates. I had been treating diet like a variable I could manage later. Exercise felt immediate, tangible, virtuous. Diet felt negotiable, flexible, emotional. I told myself I would fix it after I got stronger, leaner, more disciplined. But diet does not wait for readiness. It executes its instructions the moment food enters the body. This is what I mean when I say diet has veto power. You can train your heart, but if your meals constantly spike blood sugar, insulin will decide where energy goes. You can build muscle, but if protein is inconsistent and calories excessive, the body will still store fat. You can walk daily, but if inflammation is fed at every meal, recovery will remain compromised. Exercise does not override these decisions. It operates within them. I learned to recognize appetite not as an enemy, but as a messenger. When my food was erratic, hunger became aggressive. When meals were built around refined carbohydrates, hunger returned quickly and demanded more. When I ate in ways that destabilized blood sugar, exercise made hunger louder, not quieter. This was not weakness. This was chemistry. Hormones do not respond to intention. They respond to patterns. Leptin, which signals fullness, becomes less persuasive when the body is repeatedly overfed. Ghrelin, which signals hunger, grows louder when meals are unbalanced or delayed. Insulin, meant to manage energy, becomes overwhelmed when it is constantly required to do too much, too often. Exercise can help these systems function better, but only if they are not being undermined at every meal. This is where many people misunderstand metabolism. They imagine it as a single number, a rate, something you can increase through effort. But metabolism is coordination. It is the agreement between systems. And diet is the meeting agenda. When I began to change how I ate, something surprising happened. My need to burn off food disappeared. Hunger softened. Portions stabilized without force. Movement became enjoyable again because it was no longer serving as penance. Exercise felt supportive instead of corrective. I stopped eating as if my body were a furnace that needed constant feeding. I started eating as if it were a system that needed clarity. Fewer decisions, more consistency, less stimulation, more nourishment. And this is where the psychological shift matters. The belief that you can out-exercise a bad diet encourages bargaining. It teaches you to delay responsibility. It invites cycles of indulgence followed by punishment. This relationship with the body is exhausting. It trains guilt into movement and anxiety into meals. Letting go of that belief does something gentler and more powerful. It returns authority to the table. It simplifies the equation. It removes the need for heroics. You stop asking, how hard do I need to work this off? You start asking, do I want to give my body this instruction? This shift is quiet. It is not dramatic, but it changes everything. At my age, simplicity is not a luxury. It is survival. Complex systems fail when energy is limited. Diet-first living reduces cognitive load. It reduces hormonal chaos. It reduces the need for compensation. I no longer eat in anticipation of exercise or in recovery from it. I eat to maintain stability, and when the system is stable, movement enhances it naturally. Strength holds, balance improves, energy lasts. This is why diet is not about restriction. It is about alignment. A good diet does not ask exercise to fix mistakes. It invites exercise to build on success. It allows movement to do what it does best: support circulation, preserve muscle, protect joints, without demanding that it also undo excess. I wish someone had explained this to me when I was younger. I wish I had been told that intensity is not wisdom and suffering is not discipline. That quiet consistency outperforms heroic effort over time, that the body prefers signals it can trust. At 98, I do not chase results. I protect systems. I eat in ways that make hunger predictable, not dramatic. I move in ways that maintain function, not punishment. And in doing so, I have learned the final truth this title demands. You cannot out-exercise a bad diet, not because you are lazy or undisciplined or aging, but because biology listens to food first. So if there is one truth I leave you with, it is not a command or a rule, but a release. Release yourself from the idea that effort can rescue excess. Release the belief that suffering in motion can erase carelessness at the table. Release the quiet shame that tells you if you just worked harder, everything would fall back into place. That story is heavy and it is unnecessary. At 98, I no longer chase balance through punishment. I choose stability through intention. I eat first with awareness, not fear. I move second with respect, not debt. The order matters more than the intensity. Health is not built in moments of exhaustion. It is built in repeated, ordinary decisions that do not require heroism. When diet is aligned, exercise becomes supportive rather than corrective. Movement enhances what food has already stabilized. It no longer carries the impossible burden of undoing damage. This is not an argument against exercise. It is a correction of its role. Exercise keeps the body capable. Diet keeps it coherent. One without the other struggles, but only one holds veto power. I have walked long enough to know when walking is enough. I have eaten long enough to know when eating is the decision that matters most. And I have lived long enough to see how much suffering comes from misunderstanding this order. If you remember nothing else, remember this. You do not need to punish your body into health. You need to stop asking it to compensate for choices it cannot undo. Health is built at the table first. The gym, the path, the movement, all of that comes after, in support, not in rescue. That is not a limitation. It is clarity.